Yorgos Lanthimos, I think that's how you pronounce it, is one of my favorite directors. I love him just as much as I love Christopher Nolan's movies because this director has made two movies that have impressed me and one movie that I did not like. The movie that I absolutely love from his filmography is a movie called The Lobster, starring Colin Farrell and Rachel Weisz, and that was one of my favorite movies the year it came out. And the movie that I was introduced to him with was Dogtooth. And Dogtooth is a strange, weird movie that does have a good theme in it. And the movie that I did not care from his film and the movie that I did not care about from his filmography was his recent movie called The Killing of a Sacred Deer. I thought that movie was very confusing and the directing was good, but it was a little off in certain scenes. And yeah, I just didn't really care for The Killing of a Sacred Deer all that much, but hey, in my book, he has 2 home runs and 1 strike, and that's a really good track record, if you ask me. And so regardless of whether or not I didn't like his previous movie, I was still excited for whatever he did next. He's just my favorite director. So when I heard he was making this movie, I was super excited. And the funny thing is, I don't like movies that take place during the 19th century because it just feels phony to me. And I didn't live during that time period, so seeing it in a movie, in a TV show, whatever, it just feels staged and it just feels like everyone's wearing costumes, which is what people did back during that time with the wigs, which look ridiculous. So that's why I kind of tend to stay away from these kinds of movies because it's just not my cup of tea. But seeing that this director, Yorgos Lanthimos, did this, I was game.
As it turns out, I'm capable of much unpleasantness.
Did you just look at me? Look at me! How dare you! Close your eyes!
I could not just stand by and let you destroy me.
You are enjoying all of this, aren't you?
Oh, it is fun to be queen sometimes.
If you do not go, I will start kicking you. And I will not stop.
Yorgos Lanthimos is a fantastic director. The way he captures the shots in this movie are absolutely breathtaking. Every shot in this movie is lavish, and the only negative thing I can say about the directing in here is that there are a couple of scenes where I don't know what kind of camera he's using, but it feels like we're watching a scene through a peephole, and the image on screen, it just feels kind of wide, like we're looking in a fishbowl or something, and it looks weird and I don't like it. But other than that, I think that the tracking shots where he's following characters are really good. I would say my favorite shot in this whole movie is there's a scene where Nicholas Holt's character and Emma Stone's character, they're walking outside in this field and there are these fire torches alongside of them. That is a fantastic shot. It's beautiful. Mwah! I love it. The favorite has many different chapters in it. The titles make sense because it feels like each story in this movie, when the title pops up, a character either says the title of the story within the narrative, or they do something that is in relation to the title of the story in the narrative. So I thought that was really clever, and it kept me on my toes, and also reminded me what the titles were. I don't remember all of them. But I felt like each time a new title popped up on screen, I think there's like 1 through 8 or 9 titles in here, and they all feel like different movies, right? And so I like the different tone shifts that the director takes in this movie. The approach to it is great. When the movie first starts, I think the first title is called This Mud Stinks. And we meet Emma Stone, who plays Abigail. And Abigail is a very timid woman. She's not very brave. She gets kicked out of the carriage. She goes to work for Queen Annie, who is played by Olivia Colman. And Olivia Colman has a successor to her throne. I think it's a successor. She wants to give her empire to Sarah, who is played by Rachel Weisz. And Rachel Weisz and Olivia Colman, these two characters have a very interesting relationship in this movie. And when Rachel Weisz's character first meets Emma Stone's character, they have a bit of back and forth going here and there. And so when I first started to watch this movie, I didn't like it because, number one, like I said, I don't like movies that take place during the 19th century because it feels phony to me. And I especially felt that when I saw Nicholas Holt's character in this movie. He plays Robert Harley. And when I first saw him, I was like, he's too goofy. This movie's too over the top. It feels fake and phony. I don't like this. But it was just setting up everything. So then when we get into chapter 2, don't remember what that title's called. But when we get into chapter 2, then I feel like the movie starts to pick up steam, because then we see Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz butting heads. They constantly have this manipulative game, like who can outdo the other one, back and forth. And we start to see Emma Stone's character, first she's being very timid and she's kind of being bullied and she's being taken advantage of a little bit, and they look at her as weak. But then as the movie progresses, we start to see Emma Stone's character build more strength within herself to where she doesn't become afraid of Rachel Weisz. She's not afraid of her anymore, where she was kind of intimidated by her. But Emma Stone's character, throughout the movie with these different chapters, we see the progression of her character and her story. And I feel like it's very interesting as the movie goes along and we get into the different chapters, the movie starts to become better. And then the whole entire 19th century background, I get sucked into it. He sucked me into this world where at the beginning I was like, I don't know about this. But then as the movie went along, I started to become more interested in the characters and their stories, and the whole 19th century backdrop just faded away to me, and I accepted it and it felt real. And then, like I said at the beginning, I didn't really like Nicholas Holt's character because he seemed a little over the top and goofy. But as the movie progressed, I accepted it. I accepted who he was. And Nicholas Holt in this movie, this is the best I've ever seen him. He gets to go balls out in this movie and just be completely outrageous. And his character is an asshole. And I don't like his character, but I like how Nicholas Holt played the character. He played it perfectly. Nicholas Holt was great in this movie. And every actor was great in this movie. Emma Stone, I'd say, is the person who gets the most character development, because we see her progression and how she changes as a person as the movie progresses. And we see Rachel Weisz when she starts off as a very strong female centric character. There's a beautiful scene where Rachel Weisz and Nicholas Holt are arguing, and Nicholas Holt, being a man, and she says something to him that makes him upset, and then so he gets in her face, but she stands her ground and they meet eye to eye. And at that moment I was like, yeah, Rachel Weisz, who plays Sarah in this movie, your character's badass. She's not afraid of no man. She's not afraid of nothing. She's willing to face that man. And it was a great scene, very intense. But with the Rachel Weisz character, we noticed that, yeah, at the beginning she's a very strong, centric female character. But then when she starts butting heads with Abigail's strength goes up while Sarah's strength goes down, because then, the only reason that Sarah has this power over Abigail is because of Queen Annie. And Queen Annie, who was played by Olivia Colman, was fantastic in this movie. She was the most weirdest character ever. Like, she's super strange. And there was a couple of scenes in this movie that did bother me, where there's a scene where Queen Annie is being pushed in a wheelchair by Abigail, and then Queen Annie hears this weird song and it makes her freak out, and she just starts having a panic attack and she's freaking out, and they don't really explain why. All we get is just a little bit of dialogue by Sarah, Rachel Weisz's character, and she just says that Queen Annie has a traumatic past or something, so the movie doesn't really get into that, which I wish it did. But Olivia Colman's character in here was just fantastic. She gave a fantastic performance in here all the way around. Every actor in here did their job. And I was really invested in the story as it progressed, and I felt the tension in the narrative just getting more tense, and it was building and it was building and it was building. until the very end, which I was very disappointed with. The favorite, I wouldn't say it's my favorite movie from this guy. The Lobster's still number one to me in his resume. And I don't even think I'd put The Favorite as number two. I'd put Dogtooth as my second favorite movie from him. And I don't think I've seen all of his movies. And The Killing of a Sacred Deer, I would say, is my least favorite in his filmography, whereas The Favorite, I think, will fall in third place for me. And so my verdict for this movie is that I would give The Favorite, I would say it's a pretty good movie. It's a pretty good movie. It's got some great characters in here with some great character development. I feel like they should have just given them a bit more development to Queen Annie and why she was so mental and crazy. But we do get some good chemistry between Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz in here. We also get some good chemistry between Rachel Weisz, Nicholas Hoult, and Emma Stone in here, and they have some good dialogue and scenes back and forth. They play well off each other. Every actor in here did a great job. I feel like the ending of this movie to me is a bit confusing, and I know this guy likes to have ambiguous endings, and I would feel like this ending isn't very ambiguous. This is the only movie I've seen of his where it's not ambiguous, where I think it's just pretty much a full-blown conclusion, because we see Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz having that struggle for power, and the only way they can get that power is by tempting the queen and who the queen is going to favor the most. And so by the very end, a character gets their, wish to be the heir to the queen, and the other character kind of gets banished. Or actually, they do get banished. And the very end, this character who has won the battle is celebrating. And then the queen notices that this person isn't treating one of her bunnies right. And the queen starts to... And in her very frail, fragile state, the queen, is like, I'm the queen and I'm taking control. So the queen, by the end, gets back into power and then shows who this person who has just come into power to the heir to the queen. The queen shows who is really in control. So by the very end, I would say it's a bit depressing, because it's like, yeah, you fight for all of this power that you want, and then in order to get that power, you have to step on people's toes, you have to crush people, and you have to use and manipulate people, right, in order to get ahead and to be number one or number two, whatever. And they do this, and then by the very end, it's kind of illustrated that you did all of these things to get this power that you wanted. Now you finally got it, but is it all it's cracked up to be? Because you're still working for the queen. You're not the queen. The queen can do whatever she wants, but you're working for her. Yeah, you may get treated like royalty and not like, scum, but you're still working for the queen. So it's like, it's not all it's cracked up to be. So you work hard and you step on all these toes to get what you want, and you finally get there, and it's like, yeah, it's fun, but then really in reality, it's like, now you're stuck, and it's like, honestly, I would say that, if she wasn't the queen, then you probably wouldn't have came on to her and all that stuff. So I really enjoyed The Favorite. I thought it was very good all the way around. It's just the ending I was kind of disappointed with. So if I had to give this movie a grade, I would give it I'd give it a B+. I'd give it a B+. I would love to give it a higher grade, but it's just the ending really disappointed me, because at the beginning, like I said, I wasn't into it. And then as it progressed and we saw the different titles, I thought the story was becoming more and more intense, and I was becoming more and more involved with it, and I was loving the 19th century background. I got sucked into the world, but then by the very end, it was a bit disappointing, because it does all this building and all this, but then by the end, if it makes sense, but it just feels disappointing to me. I feel like there could have been more there. Like, he could have put more in this movie. I guess I just wanted more. And overall, it's just disappointed. And it's a pretty good movie. I enjoyed it. I like The Favorite, but it's not my favorite movie from his filmography. I still think The Lobster is number one. That's an absolutely fantastic movie. Check that out if you haven't seen it. But The Favorite, yeah, I thought it was pretty good. Give it a B+, and it's solid. It's solid. There's really nothing wrong with it, except that I just don't like the way it ends. I think the ending could have been more powerful, and I think You know, it could have been more intense, and I really think they should have given a bit more character development to Queen Annie, who's played by Olivia Colman, just to explain a couple things. But other than that, this movie is great. It's pretty much flawless, except these little minor things that I have a problem with. But other than that, I enjoyed the movie though. And I might watch it again, who knows, but it's really good. And that's all I have to say. So as always, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next time.
My dear friend, how good to see you've returned from
Hell, I'm sure you shall pass through it one day.